Hey there, 412ers. This is the second video that I'm putting together. It's kind of some background and foundational content for us. So that first video, I taught the triangle that gives us a picture of Jesus' life up, in, and out relationships that he invested in. But what I want to do in this second video is actually take the theme verse, the core verse that 412 is really built around from 1 Timothy 4:12. I want to read that, and then I want to try to layer that word that Paul is trying to bring to Timothy around the triangle as well. And so if you would take a look at this. This is 1 Timothy 4:12. So again, this is the Apostle Paul. He became a follower of Jesus after he had been persecuting the church. And so you can see God's great redemptive love, and that even though he was causing harm to the church, God called him. He responded to that call by saying yes, and then really his whole life begins to turn around. He becomes a major part of really the early church, and most of the New Testament books, the majority of the New Testament books are actually written by the Apostle Paul. So he's now probably a really old man. That 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy are some of the later letters that he would have written. And so now, after having been doing this and having this major life change happen earlier in his life, he's now investing in a much younger group of pastors and leaders, and Timothy happens to be one of them. So he's writing this letter to Timothy, and this is one of the things that he happens to say to Timothy. He says, "Don't let anyone think less of you because you are young." So very first sentence, he's really just trying to prioritize that, Timothy is a young pastor, and he's leading a group of people and probably relating to many people who are much older than him. And so he's just saying, like oftentimes can happen, if somebody is perceived as young, that maybe means that they're perceived as immature, or like they're going to make a bunch of mistakes. And so don't let anybody think less of you, Paul's saying, just because you're young. But then he goes on to this positive side. Here's what you should do. Be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way that you live, in your love, in your faith, and in your purity. And so he actually tells Timothy, of course, don't let people look down on you, maybe calling you immature or thinking less of you. But he actually says, I want you to do something. I want you to be an example to people. And I want you to do this in these 5 different ways. So first he says, I want you to be an example to believers in what you say. So your words, watch what your words say, because they exemplify something. Be an example in that. The second one, he says, be an example in the way that you live. And so this has to do with your behaviors, all of the things that you would do with your body. So the words are with your lips, the way is with your body. In your love, that's going to be in the relationships and connections that you have with one another. In your faith, that's going to be how you follow God, how you trust him, and how you actually reveal that you trust him by maybe doing hard things, or by doing things where you're not confident in it in your own strength, but you're confident in it because God's calling you to do it. And the last one, he says, be an example in your purity. So let me take the whiteboard over again. What I'm going to do, like I mentioned, is going to frame it around these, the up, in, and out of Jesus' life. And so, I played with this a little bit earlier, and I was trying to think, which one of these is words up, in, and out. I think that really it's going to have to do with all of them. So I would place words here. Be an example with your words. That's going to be in the way that you relate to God, in the way that you relate to one another, and in the way that you relate to people outside of the family of God. This doesn't mean just don't cuss. What this means is your words can build up and your words can tear down. And so it's going to be really important. Probably the most difficult place for you with your words is probably at home. You know your brothers and sisters very well. You know your parents very well. And sometimes with the people that we're closest to, we almost feel the least guarded to pay attention to those. But I want to encourage you, be an example with your words in your home. The other one that Paul says is that the way that you live, or your ways. I'm just going to summarize it that way. Again, I tried to look, is this up, in, and out? Really, you could put it in all 3 of these. The ways that you connect to the Father, the ways that you live as a disciple, the ways that you connect to people outside in the world. And so again, where words are with your lips, ways are going to be really with your body. Think about what it's like when you walk into a room. Some of you are more outgoing and extroverted. Some of you are maybe a little bit more timid and introverted, but you have ways that you go about doing things. And so think about that. And then be an example is what Paul is telling Timothy here. The next one is that be an example with your love. Love is an important part. This really embodies what Jesus stood for and how he lived. That doesn't mean that he's always nice and kind either, because sometimes love is strong and firm and direct. And so love is going to be very complex in the way that it's going to come across. But in general, what love does, especially the type of love that Jesus embodies, is it puts others first. And so it prioritizes. There's a sacrificial love beyond that. And so be an example in the way that you love people. The fourth one that is listed here is be an example in your faith. And so, this is a tough word because there's not really a word in English that is kind of the original Greek word that Paul would have been talking about. Oftentimes, if you just say, I need to have faith, there's always an object attached to your faith. Faith in what? And then that faith isn't something that you just kind of like believe in your head or feel in your heart, although emotions and thoughts are very much connected still to faith. Faith really is what you do. So you can tell what someone believes by how they trust and how they live their life of faith. And so it's a much more complex word than I think sometimes we simply understand that word to be. Paul says, be an example in your faith, in the way that you live and how that shows that you trust God, even if he can't be seen in a particular situation. And then the last one is be an example in your purity. This kind of attaches, you could have pure words, pure ways, pure love, and pure faith. But I think this has to do with the way that you actually kind of touch the world around you. I would, really encourage you, think about purity of what you listen to, purity in what you see, and purity of what comes from your life. So kind of even just, maybe even broaden it outside of those three to just the general five senses, walking in a purity that would not be a purity defined by what feels good or purity defined by here's what I think other people want, but a purity that really is defined by God and how he would call you to live. And so since we are called 412, that's the name of the group. It's based on 1 Timothy, not 1 Tom, 1 Timothy 4:12 is the verse that it comes from. And here we can see Paul saying, I want you, Timothy, to not let people look down on you because you're young, but set an example. An example, we want to pattern it after the life of Jesus, is do the words, ways, love, faith, and purity as an example like Jesus would. And this is kind of the aim of where we're wanting to go. Thanks, guys, for watching this video.